Hi, sorry, I'm a couple minutes late. I misplaced my glasses. I didn't know. It took me, like, almost 10 minutes to find them on the floor. I can't see, man. I like to actually be able to read chat. Imagine that. How's everybody doing? I hope everybody had a good weekend. It is now Monday, and I've been debating on turning Mondays into, like, a more casual thing, so we're not spending as much time, like, watching dumb things, but it's more of, like, a casual, let's chat and kind of talk about the concepts a little bit more that we discuss on a regular basis. But, you know, I don't know, today, we're talking about Jordan Peterson. That was in a video this video title changed. It was originally titled One Christian versus 20 Atheists. And now it is titled Jordan Peterson versus 20 Atheists, because I guess he doesn't like being identified accurately. I think that there's, like, a couple of reasons why. I think one of them is intellectual laziness. Like, it's easier to just be like, oh, I don't actually believe in anything, so I don't have to defend my position. All I have to do is poke holes in your position, as if that's valid or means anything or makes you big-brained. It doesn't do that. It makes you lazy. Jordan Peterson versus 20 bears. That would be good. It's kind of bright, eh? Let me fix that real quick. I'm really washed out. Not that I terribly mind that much, but that should fix it. Better? Better. Hi. Hello. Hi. Hi. Welcome. Hello. Hi. Hope everybody's having a good weekend and has a good week to look forward to. I'm here to ruin it by showing you Jordan Peterson. Trapped in a bear. If you were in the woods, would you pick a bear or a random man? Pick the bear because one of those men is Jordan Peterson. All right, let's get into this. I think he's also, like, a lying liar who lies because he's a fucking grifter. For anybody who doesn't know anything about Jordan Peterson, like, built his entire right-wing punditry career off of lying about and making, like, bold extremist statements about, like, Canadian harassment laws and selling that to Americans, and Americans fucking bought that shit. I don't know. But alas, let's dive into this. I don't want it to spoil. Don't give me the intro. I'm gonna skip the intro because, like, I want it to, like... I just want to, like, start with... Here we go. It starts, like, right around here. There we go.
I'm a clinical psychologist, a professor emeritus at the University of Toronto, an author, a podcaster, public speaker, and today I'm surrounded by...
So did he say he was a clinical psychologist?
Peterson. I'm a clinical psychologist.
You have your license suspended, sir, and you lost your appeal in the Canadian court system to have that decision by the board of psychology in Canada. It's like the Canadian Board of Psychology, I think is what it was called. He lost his license, is currently suspended. And it's looking at, I don't know if it actually got revoked or not, but that was, like, the end goal. Either he took a course on how to be not a jackass, or he gave up his license, and he lost his appeals and then fled the country and ran away to America. So, like, him coming on here in the year of our Lord 2025 to try to fucking pretend that he's fucking not, like, you're not a clinical psychologist anymore, sir. You haven't been for a long time. I'm gonna go ahead and call that a ding 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 on the lie detector. Can we get bells in the chat, please? Bells in the chat, thank you very much.
Professor emeritus at the University of Toronto, an author, a podcaster, public speaker.
He got kicked out of the University of Toronto because all the students fucking hated him because he's a piece of shit.
Today I'm surrounded by 25 atheists.
25, ooh.
My first claim, atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting.
Yo, everybody's just ready to fucking take him on. His first claim, atheists don't understand what they're rejecting. Okay, so this is already a loaded sort of claim in the first place, because if you define God as unknowable, then nobody can possibly know what they're rejecting or accepting on that basis. So it depends on how you define God. A lot of religions, particularly Christianity, define God as this unknowable being that we can't possibly understand God due to our being humans. And so it's kind of a silly definitional technicality that doesn't really mean anything. But we'll see what these atheists say.
Good afternoon, Dr. Peterson.
How are you doing?
So this claim here that atheists don't know what they're rejecting. My background is in studying to become a traditional Catholic priest, daily mass, daily rosary, going on long retreats, deep into the magisterium and biblical hermeneutics. I was thoroughly in it. And it seems like I do know what I'm missing. Is there something that I missed over years of study, both this issue formally and living out religion so deeply?
Well, you obviously feel that you missed something when you were practicing for the priesthood. Your aim was...
What? Why does he obviously feel that way? You're the one making the claim. What is this weird flip? How does he obviously think that? Clearly he doesn't think that. He's asking you. Oh no. Oh, this is how this is gonna go. Oh goody.
off then. So there's always the possibility that it's still off now.
What was off about my aim in the first place?
I don't know. That might take a long time to figure out. But
then it seems kind of like this no true Scotsman type of fallacy in which you're the arbiter of people's aims and how they understand those aims to be. How is it that you can...
I wouldn't call that a no true Scotsman fallacy. I would call it just like pain. It's just a blatant dismissal based off of fucking nothing, though. Begging the question would be more accurate. Yeah, Baba, I think you're correct. I think if you wanted to call that a fallacy, which I'm not entirely sure it is, outside of, like, it's just wrong and stupid. Unfortunately, just being wrong and stupid is not a fallacy. But begging the question might be a little bit more along those lines.
Claim that people don't know something that you know about their life despite not having met them?
well, it's obviously a generic claim, just like the atheists claim that there's no God.
Yeah.
No, it's not a generic claim, Peterson. You said you obviously feel that you missed something and your aim was off in the first place. That is a you identifier, not you general. You were talking to this specific individual. It can't possibly be a generic claim, or are you saying that about every Catholic? Or every ex-Catholic. Oh my god, what the fuck? Oh, he's so bad at this.
It's a generic claim. In your case, it would have to be specified more, and I'm not claiming to understand what was going on in your mind, but my experience with atheists.
Why would it have to be specified more? I mean, you could specify that this person rejected the Catholic God, but also other gods. So, like, okay, whatever.
This is twofold, is that they have a very reductive experience with atheists is twofold.
My experience with atheists, okay, that's not anything. That is just your experience. We can brush off of everything he's about to say. We have no idea how many atheists he's talked to. We have no idea how deeply he knew those people, or how much he even listened to them, because we know that Jordan Peterson doesn't fucking listen to anybody that isn't sucking him off. We've already been over that. So, if you want to talk about fallacious reasoning, if I drive a car once and get in a car crash, it doesn't tell me anything about about road safety in general for a country, or let alone for another country I don't even live in. Like, it doesn't mean anything. It's almost like atheists in America are a little bit different than atheists around the world. Because something, there's America and not America, and the cultural differences influence how people interact socially with their environment. You'd think a psychologist would know this. Anyway, sorry. Let's let him talk for longer than 30 seconds. Fuck. Up yours, woke moralists. There's been some Canadian update news, but I'm not talking about it right now. I just want to get into this.
On in your mind, but my experience with atheists is twofold. Is that they have a very reductive notion of what constitutes God, let's say in the Judeo-Christian tradition, and they've often been hurt by someone who was religious or by the religious enterprise or perhaps by God himself, so to speak, and that's left them with an animus.
But I think that you have a reductive view.
Okay, and? That doesn't dismiss anything. That's just an observation about atheists that Jordan Peterson has experienced. And?
Of what atheism is. You've defined religion so broadly to include any sort of having aim in life, any sort of cultural archetypes, or having a metaphorical substrate. And atheism to you is a very specific type of like 3 people in the world that are these Raskolnikov type of, they want to get away with a perfect murder. It seems like you have the reductive view of what an atheist is.
I mean, yeah, he did arbitrarily define that atheists have these experiences, and that's not the case around the world. It's not even necessarily the majority. You'd have to do a study to know that, but whatever. That'd be science, and we know that Jordan Peterson is an anti-science, pseudoscience grifter, so... But that's a fair point.
Well, let's start with your claim. How do you define the...
Why are we starting with that person's claim? Atheists don't understand what they're rejecting was what we're supposed to be discussing.
God that you're rejecting. Like, what is God to you? You studied in the church, you found that unsatisfactory. How would you characterize what you rejected?
I think the average Christian believer, when they say that they're Christian and they believe, they mean some sort of God that is all-powerful, all-perfect, is somehow involved in the matters of this world, and that we look to them through wisdom and with the Logos incarnate in Christ. And it also seems like you don't believe in religion in the way that the average Christian says that they believe in religion.
I already love this woman. I don't know who she is, or if she's gonna get a chance to talk. Her hair is gorgeous. Her outfit is peak. I love that she is taking notes. I love her. Does she come on? I want to hear what she says.
And there are as many gods out there as there are believers, because everybody has mutually exclusive and different views of what God is. So it seems
well,
like...
if everybody had mutually exclusive views of what God is, no one could speak to each other.
No. That's not even remotely close to true. What do you mean? Not everybody sees the same shade of red when everybody can socially agree that somewhere within this bracket is red enough to be defined as red. And, like, that also changes in color theory in particular. When you hold up, like, an orange or a yellow to an orange, that orange will look more red than the yellow. And so you might call it red until you put a different color beside it, like a blue. And then suddenly that blue, or that red that you defined earlier, is now more orange. Like... If everybody had a different view of things, then nobody would be able to communicate. God, that's so stupid. That's very fucking dumb.
The mere fact of communication presumes a commonality of assumption and definition. And it's certainly not the case. Presumes a commonality. Well, if everybody had mutually exclusive views of what God is, no one could speak to each other. The mere fact of communication presumes a commonality of assumption and definition. And so...
How so? How so? You can have, like, socially agreed upon terms, but that does not remove your individual experience and your individual perception at all. Make him talk to a solipsist. You can agree on terms and still perceive. If I say, think of a dog, what kind of dog do you think of? That doesn't mean a dog is a universal constant. You might think of something that looks more like a fox, you might think of something that looks more like a wolf, you might think of something that's more like cat looking, you might think of something that's big, you might think of something that's small, and part of that will have to do with your upbringing and your experience with dogs, and that changes depending on where you live, but we've collectively decided to call this dog. But that doesn't mean communication breaks down because I think of a different dog than you do. The commonality is just being human. The language changes based on region. Primal social cues are universal, but what does Jesus have to do with communication? Yo, Generic's 100% right. Abso-fucking-lutely. Absolutely. And here's the other thing. If you want to talk about communication, you want to talk about this communication presumes a commonality of assumption and definition. Motherfucker, there's more than one language. And those definitions change. And language is incredibly malleable. This can mean shoe, or it can mean come here, depending on where you are in the world. Go away, come here. The gesture is the same. Even sign language is incredibly different depending on where you go in the world. And that's non-verbal. Do you think Jordan Peterson forgot that there's non-verbal language? In fact, a lot of it. In fact, you guys right now are communicating with me non-verbally. This is very fucking dumb. Alright, and so what? And so what, Jordan?
Communication presumes a commonality of assumption and definition. And it's certainly not the case that I regard any archetypal manifestation whatsoever as equally religious. So that's not a real claim.
So you have a position that is an individual position to yourself, Jordan, but an atheist can't, or people can't about God. Jordan Peterson's definition of God is not consistent, nor is it, universal. So that doesn't make any sense anyway. That's not how Middle Eastern people say "come here." I didn't realize that as an American. Growing up Muslim was eye-opening. Yeah, no, if you go to different places in the world, different hand gestures will mean different things. The middle finger, thumbs up, hang loose, or call me. So this one changes depending on how close it is to your head. This doesn't even fucking make sense anymore for the kids these days. So, it doesn't fucking make any sense.
Let me give you an example. For example, there's a sub-narrative in the story of Moses where Moses is rewarded with a glimpse of God. Okay, and that's one of the ways that God is characterized in the Old Testament stories.
Yes.
Now, Moses is a faithful servant of God and a good man. At least that's the case within the confines of the story.
One possible.
Sure. Depends on when you're looking at Moses, but all right.
Interpretation.
It's the case within the confines of the story, obviously. But
No, not everybody reads the same story and comes away with the same fucking... This guy's right. This guy says that's one interpretation, and he's 100% right. And Jordan Peterson is just like, well, it's obviously this way. That's not how it works. If I say side, do you know where I'm talking about? No. If you say the word, which direction is up? And which direction is down? Definitionally, it's arbitrary. If I say the word week, what am I referring to? Am I referring to a day? Am I referring to a length of time? Or am I referring to a personal status of lacking strength. You don't know without context or without it being written down because they're written differently, and that's just English, let alone any other language that defines things completely differently. Anyway, this guy's right. It's not obviously. There are lots of different interpretations of the Bible and biblical stories. So for Jordan Peterson to pretend there aren't is actually insane.
The case within the confines of the story, obviously.
Obviously. When we look at the Bible can't precisely say anything because there are so many different exegetical and hermeneutic views of this particular book, and that everybody has disagreed historically on, it seems like, even the most benign detail about a book this big. And it seems like you can only say that the Bible says something if you first presuppose that it's univocal.
So you're
Jordan Peterson is presupposing. That's what he said. He said that if you have language and the ability to communicate, you propose that there are these universal constants that everybody agrees on with definitions. Motherfucker, you don't want to talk to me about how many times I've had to listen to fucking arguments about definitions.
Claim essentially is that Moses in the Old Testament plays the role of a villain or is irrelevant. Because the alternative claim is that he's good.
No, that's a false dichotomy, Jordan. It doesn't have to be the villain. It doesn't have to be the hero. It doesn't have to be irrelevant. There are multiple options. You can be an antagonist and be the main character. And you can be the hero and the villain sometimes at the same time. And different people can interpret it differently. So if you say, for example, Moses in this story, within the confines of this specific passage, which is already cherry picking, by the way, if you already agree that you're going to take this particular passage from Moses, and Jordan Peterson is going to define Moses as the hero and a good person, which is already philosophically complicated, and then say that everyone interprets it that way, that's just not true. That is just not true. Somebody else can view him as the villain of the story. By all accounts, the story of Moses in Exodus, what God does to the Egyptians is devastatingly awful, and he didn't need to do that, but he did it anyway, making Moses a bad guy. So now you've suddenly changed the entire context of the following story. So any story that continues to follow Moses from that perspective and that initiating perspective changes the way you view Moses for the rest of the book. Jordan is somebody who likes to refer to books and authors and storytelling and these archetypes as if they're equivocally like applicable to just people across the board with these really broad paint strokes. He's awfully stringent on how people are allowed to interpret art and the written word, because that's literally just not how art works.
First presuppose that it's univocal.
So your claim essentially is that Moses in the Old Testament plays the role of a villain or is irrelevant. Because
that's also not what he said. He is saying that you're presupposing everyone's interpretation being the same, Jordan. I'm docking fucking 3 points off of Jordan just for this one little chunk, and 5 points to this guy who's just rolling him right now.
Alternative claim
I'm saying
is that
we
he's
can't
good.
know, because we can't talk to those authors.
If you are going to start with the presupposition that there's nothing I can say about any of these stories.
No! You are the one presupposing, Jordan. This guy didn't presuppose shit. James, yeah, I agree. People will have their own way of interpretation, and they will likely change in time the more you spend with it. Like you said, how art works. People change the way they interpret the Bible as Christians who read more of the Bible. If you take somebody who just starts studying the Bible in high school, and they read the whole Bible in high school, then let's say they don't read it as often. They like pick out passages for church or whatever, and then like 10 years goes by, and they reread that Bible, they are not going to come away with the same fucking interpretations of every verse in that Bible and every story in that Bible that they did when they were 15 to 25. You've had life experience, and that's okay. That's good. The Bible is supposed to be a book that you can open up and interpret new things and apply them to your life differently. In Christianity, in a lot of like evangelical Christianity, that's the point. God is giving you different things to interpret at different points in your life to assist you. That's the way it's brought up. So it's so bizarre to see Jordan trying to weirdly lean on this thing that is just non-conducive whatsoever. So like that, like the book...
that you're not going to disagree with from the perspective that there are multiple potential competing claims, then I can't speak with you. So you have
Crisps, being a dick in the chat, says, what high school are these kids from? The guy who's talking to Peterson right now is somebody who was going to seminary for Catholicism. These aren't high school kids. And trying to dismiss their arguments based on how old they are is fallacious. How about deal with what they're saying? How about grow a pair?
I have a short time here, so I want to get to the core of what you're arguing here, and I'd love if we could.
The core of what I'm arguing is that atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. So I'm trying to give you an example of what's being rejected.
I don't know what this red flag means. Does anybody? I haven't watched this like channel before. Does anybody know what the rules are with this red flag? Please tell me.
And its complexity. Okay, so God rewards Moses with a glimpse of the divine. So this is a definition of the God that atheists are hypothetically rejecting.
A possible one.
Yeah, it is one interpretation that atheists are rejecting. This guy is fine. I agree with this guy being like, okay, fine, yeah, we can work with this one definition. But again, the Judeo-Christian version of God is only one of the plethora. Can I, by the way, point out that, again, in evangelical Christianity, you're supposed to have a personal relationship with God, meaning that even in the Christianity that Jordan Peterson is fucking already set up to have a personal relationship and interpretation of God in the first place. So Jordan Peterson has basically just disenfranchised and dismissed the entire evangelical Christian denomination of all the different denominations, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to communicate, according to Jordan Peterson. So he has to presuppose. That's the presupposition that's going on here. Yeah, so Crispy said he crawled to the table, and he wanted to get there first. What's your point? Grow up and deal with the argument instead of trying to ad hominem attack these people and insult them as a way of dismissal, which is what makes something an ad hominem. The red flag means they think someone is doing badly and the next one should take over. Enough red flags and they get to switch. I think this guy's doing a great job, actually.
I said Yeah. I didn't say the. I said That
is possible, yes.
So Jordan Peterson is just trying to be condescending because the guy just agreed with him.
Okay. So despite the fact that Moses is a stellar character and he's had a long and difficult life and can withstand a lot of difficulty and travail, God puts him between two cliffs so he can just see a crack of what's in front of him. And when God walks by, he allows him to see his back. Okay, so the implication of that story is that the divine is fundamentally unknowable. It's a pinnacle experience.
Called it! I get the points. Called it. He defines God as unknowable. Therefore, nobody, by that definition, is this not literally what I said at the fucking beginning? Called it. He made the statement, atheists don't understand what they're rejecting. I said he's going to define God as unknowable. And when he defines God as unknowable, it means that nobody could possibly know what they're rejecting. And then I countered it. And I said, hey, guess what? That means you can't possibly know what you're accepting or believing in either. I win! Goodbye! I win! You predictable fuck! By that fucking logic, there is no such thing as a fucking theist either. Oh my god! I'm amazing. 10 points for me. You know what? Just because I fucking nailed that so goddamn hard, I'm opening one of these. So if people in the chat give me, I'm cracking a spice, all right? I know we're not doing the goal right now. I'll put the goal on after so we can do the spice, but I'm going to do a preemptive spice for how good that was. I'm fucking amazing. All right, guys, give me a number. Number in the chat. Jordan Peterson's fucking falling apart. Whoo! I mean, then you can literally just then go with the I don't know it, therefore it's not true bullshit, right? 4? Perfect. Hot habanero, let's go. Hot habanero. Oh, I guess I'll show it to you guys if you guys want to see it. Let's go. This was the face on the bottom of it, and I feel like it's gonna give me the hiccups. Oh! It did in fact give me the hiccups. Oh no. All right, let's let Jordan Peterson talk himself in a circle for 20 minutes. I win. Actually, you know what? We're gonna skip ahead. I just debunked him preemptively. So his argument, dog walked. Completely dog walked. Next guy, let's go. Yeah, see, this guy says the same thing I do. All right, cool, yeah. All right, next guy. Look at this high school student. All right, let me real quick start the goal. All the colors. Spice. All right, goal is ready. Let's go.
How's it going? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you,
David.
David, good to see you.
Tell me everything that you know.
How does he get, by the way, his question is, or his statement is, atheists don't understand what they're rejecting. How do you get dog walked on the first person almost instantaneously? I'm fine with the unknowable aspect and personally agree, in a sense, even biblically, only the son knows the father if you are Christian. Sure, yeah. But that's when the conversation should just stop. No, I agree, absolutely. Like, some people will be okay with the unknowability, and some people won't, and that's fine. Like, both answers are valid. Completely valid. You can be like, listen, I'm not comfortable without this amount of knowledge dedicating my life to this being that I can't possibly know or understand in a way that makes any kind of devotion or believability, that's not the right word, but you know what I mean, believability, like, worthwhile, because at the drop of a hat, anything that you thought you knew could be completely wrong. And so it leaves a very that's valid. That can feel very destabilizing. Hi, Barry. On the other hand, some people are more comfortable with that, because then they're like, listen, I am totally okay with dedicating my life to this because I have enough faith or I have enough belief that this being, even if I don't understand them, is doing what they believe or they think is going to be the best possible outcome, even if it's not the best outcome for my short lifespan, etc. Some people like it, some people don't like it, and both feelings about it are valid. But I'm not here to convince anybody not to believe into their chosen deities. Again, God is arbitrary, right? Or I shouldn't say God is arbitrary. In some ways, in some religions, God is a little bit arbitrary. But I mean, like, there's like an omniscient God, and then there are like personality gods, let's call them. Right? And that's like more like your Roman styled gods. I mean, like, God has a personality in the Old Testament, but doesn't really have a personality in the New Testament, for example, in Christianity. So, like, there's, like, the personality God who is jealous, right? He's described in the Old Testament as a jealous God. Right? So he's got these personality traits, which are almost non-existent in the New Testament. But, whew! Let's go!
About the Polynesian deity Lono, L-O-N-O.
I don't know anything about the Polynesian deity Lono.
So you're rejecting something without knowledge of what you're rejecting.
I'm not.
Fucking, what did I tell you? I didn't watch this ahead of time, and I knew Peterson was gonna get dog walked because he was gonna say something so fucking arbitrarily meaningless, like atheists don't understand what they're rejecting. Oh, what a bunch of fucking nonsense. I think as time rolls on, the gods will get more and more abstract. They have to, because there is less and less room intellectually for anything else. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think with the more things... I think there's always going to be space for a god, because I think variability is not something we can fully grasp or predict. So because of... And I think God does give people hope. And I think God does help people, some people, in some ways. So I don't think that it's going to go away, but I do think that there's... I think there's a limit to how abstract God will get before becoming so abstract that it's meaningless. It's just a vibe. Which, I think is fine. If you want God to be a vibe, that's cool. I might prefer vibe God.
Not rejecting it. No more than I'm rejecting.
Do you believe in Lono?
That I don't know anything about.
Do you believe in Lono? Do you believe that he is a deity that exists in the world, exists in the universe, that exists in the existence of everything? Do you believe that Lono is a
I'll answer that
being?
question once you answer my question, which is, do I reject everything that I'm ignorant of? Because that's your presupposition that undergirds your argument.
He keeps accusing people of presuppositions, and that's not what they're doing. They're trying to fucking... I think this guy should have just got up and walked away after the first one. Do you believe in this one? No? Okay, I'm done.
Argument, and unless you can prove that that's valid, then there's no point.
My question is quite simple.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's
believe-
formulated accurately.
Do you believe that
So
Lono...
what? So this is a problem that people do, right? This is a problem that, like, faux intellectual horse shit will try and pull, right? They'll say, well, you didn't formulate your question properly in this live debate setting that's, like, time crunched. And it's like, there's a difference between... This is why I don't view Jordan Peterson as an honest interlocutor, right? If he was an honest interlocutor, he would steel man what he thinks this person is saying and just earnestly ask and be like, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking me. Is it this? Yeah, and Jordan Peterson's question is super loaded. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and he's confusing, he's throwing the word validity around, like...
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's
believe-
formulated accurately.
Do you believe that Lono exists? Yes or no?
I'm not going to answer that question for the reasons I just described.
Just answer, I don't know. I don't have enough knowledge to make a discernment about this particular god. You don't know because you don't have enough information to fucking make a fucking call about your personal belief about something. That's all. Though the problem is that Jordan Peterson can't answer that question, and he can't answer that question because the logical line that answer follows is to say that how much information do you need before making a decision? And then when you answer that honestly, you then have to say that you do not need full knowledge of something to have a belief or make a decision. Therefore, atheists are fine without understanding every facet of a god to reject it. You don't have full knowledge of anything. That's not possible. Because you don't know what you don't know. And so because you don't know what you don't know, you can't possibly make any belief or any decision with full fucking knowledge about anything. Because that's just not how life works. It's almost like Jordan Peterson is grappling and fighting with being human. He can't answer the question. I told you he was gonna get dog walked. I fucking knew it. I knew he was gonna get dog walked. Absurd.
Right. You already insisted that if I reject something, that if I'm ignorant of something, I reject it. Do you think that
that's not what he said?
Everyone in the world has to know everything simultaneously for that to be valid and true?
I think in order for your argument to be true...
Oh my God.
In order for it to be true that we atheists don't understand what we're rejecting, then you need to also apply that to yourself and to Christians and to Muslims and to any other person on this earth where if you don't understand what you're...
If you make a decision to buy your cat food, and you're making as informed of a decision as possible for the health of your cat, where you've researched the food, you've researched the brand, you've taken your cat to the vet, you've got them some dietary whatever needs that they have to have met, do you know everything? And will it then therefore have the desired outcome by feeding your cat that food? No, because there are things you don't know, and you can't ever possibly know. Crisp, grow up before you start trying to accuse other people of being children. Like I said, how about actually contend with the argument instead of trying to dismiss people by degrading them and insulting children? Children are smart, children are learned. They'll figure things out. So how about, which is more than what Jordan Peterson is able to do in this video so far. But I don't have a cat. Oh well. Damn, whole analogy falls apart.
Rejecting the belief in, then you can't reject the belief in it. That's the implication of your claim.
I didn't say that I rejected the belief in Lona. I said I didn't know who Lona was. I didn't say anything about rejecting.
That's because I've asked you several times and you haven't. But let me get to my even greater point. Mm-hmm. You're saying atheists don't understand what religion is or what God is in order to be able to reject it fully or completely. We have someone over here who studied it in their own way. I've studied religion. I have a degree in religious studies, specialty in Christianity and Mediterranean traditions. And further than that, beyond me, Pew Research studies suggest that atheists and agnostics actually know more about religion and about religious stories, the foundational principles, than believers.
Oh. That's because they're more religious than they think they are.
Okay.
What? That's a loaded statement. Because you are learned about something, therefore you believe in it? What? That's not how that works. You can study the Holocaust a lot, and that doesn't mean you think the Holocaust was a good idea or you believe in it. That doesn't fucking make any sense. Hey, Crisp, I'm gonna time you out, so until you can actually make a fucking point, it's okay, it's only gonna be a minute. Get your shit together, make an argument or a point about any of the discussion going on, then we can talk. Hell, I can even send you a link and bring you on. But you just trying to poke at other people and individuals isn't gonna get you anywhere. That's not how we do things here. The way we do things here is actually honest discussion, which actually means honest engagement. Yeah, generic can have mods. Absolutely, I trust generic. Give yourself a mod, and boom, done. Standard moderator, there you go.
You can.
They're concerned with deep matters, and one of the defining characteristics of someone who's oriented in a religious direction is that they're concerned with deep matters.
Okay.
What? Oh my god, motherfucker, you have any idea how many shallow Christians there are out there? Or shallow religious people there are out there? That is literally one of the things that preachers preach about all the fucking time. Like, Peterson, when was the last time you went to church? You go to church, there are regular fucking discussions. Regular fucking discussions about fair weather followers. Good God.
In fact, it's virtually definitional.
Right, but they also have to identify with a religious tradition and accept the foundational stories that go along
Well,
with
that would mean more that they're sectarian than that they're religious. And most people, for example, in the United States, deny that they're religious, but accept that they're spiritual.
Let's pause there. You've been voted out by...
Those are different fucking things. So, like, you can be spiritual and not religious, and you can be religious and not spiritual. Like, these are interchangeable. They're meaningless, like, in context of this discussion.
The majority.
Okay, so... Aha! Hi, nice to meet you.
How are you doing?
Good, how
What's
are you?
your name?
I'm Greg, nice to meet you.
Greg.
Can we vote Peterson out? I wish.
Okay, so I feel like you're getting at this idea of polysemy, where we have multiple related meanings for a word, right? Like, for example, a famous painting can be emotionally moving in that it changes my emotional state. And when I was on the highway coming here to the studio, I was physically moving. I was changing my position. If I said, I believe the Mona Lisa is very moving, and you said, you don't really understand what you're saying, it's nailed to the wall, I would say that you're the one who doesn't understand what I'm saying, not the other way around. And the way that relates to this is there are many concepts of God, and I'll admit, I find a lot of what you say about that interesting. I'm familiar with it. The idea of this kind of Jungian hierarchical thing, or as a metaphor or a symbol, or the kind of, atheist, materialist, literalist idea of a agentic, omnipotent, omniscient being that intervenes in reality, right? So when I'm saying that I reject the concept of God, I'm aware of these other definitions of God, but I think that when we use words, we tend to only imply one meaning at a time. So the same way that I would say the Mona Lisa is moving emotionally, but I would not say it's moving physically. I would say I reject the concept of God in this very literal way. But
what literal way?
The way that God is this omniscient, omnipotent, agentic, supernatural being that sent his son down.
This guy's doing a really good job.
And has, caused miracles and all these things like that. The idea of God is
Do you think that there's an underlying unity of things?
Could you explain that question?
Well, scientists, for example, believe that science unifies in a comprehensive theory. Do you, yes, no, or that there are multiple competing truths? Those are the options. Either things unify or there are multiple competing truths.
What? Either things unify or there are multiple competing truths. I feline. And are we are we diving back into the false dichotomy again? You know that two things can be true at the same time, not be the same thing, not be unifying, but both individual be true? But then you also have to have a whole philosophical discussion about what is truth. He's ignoring the third way, that there are multiple models of reality, all of which are valid as long as someone has that perspective. Yeah, Barry's right. By the way, I recommend coming and checking out Barry on the philosophy show that we do over on Debate Hub Official. That's on the first Saturday of every month.
I think that I know that, for example, like in physics, people are looking for like a theory of everything.
And why do you think they're doing that?
It's interesting, it's helpful.
But they also believe that there's an underlying unity to things.
No, they don't have to believe that. They want to find out if it is. That is before you have a belief. That is, I want to look for this thing that might exist. not I believe this thing exists, therefore. Okay, we're back to a fundamental problem with Peterson's position. The fundamental problem meaning that you've put the belief before the knowledge. You believe this thing, and now you're looking for the knowledge. No, you're looking for the knowledge to form your belief. Knowledge is that we're talking about subsets. A map of a country cannot be thought of as true or untrue. It's just a map. It's either useful or it's not. That's also a really good point, Barry. Yeah, absolutely. They've got it. He's trying to present science as if it functions the same way a religious belief functions by a group like Answers in Genesis, for example. Answers in Genesis has a belief and then tries to shove the science into the box, and anything that doesn't fit in the box gets tossed to the side and said it's not useful, it's not true, it's propaganda, or it's garbage. It doesn't matter. Science doesn't give a shit. Science is like, we think there is a box here, but we don't know what the constraints of the box are, so we're going to see if we can find out what the constraints of this box that might exist could be. Generic says, I once again want to remind people I am more accredited as a psychologist than Jordan is. I'm at the point where I almost feel like I'm more accredited. We think there's a box here, but we don't know if the cat is still alive. Yeah, exactly.
Sense, yeah, like like the material world and time and space are probably governed by universal laws and principles.
Partly that, yes, yes.
And part of that whole concept is just through our perception as humans, and as humans we are predisposed to look for patterns. And one of the reasons why we are predisposed to look for patterns is because of evolution and social evolution. Specifically because safety and staying alive. God, Jorgensen's such a tool. He got absolutely dog-walked.
That the same thing might extend to a broader domain that would include imagination and value.
Could you help me connect that to the prompt?
Well, I'm trying to define God, the God that I don't think atheists do a very good job of defining. Here's another...
Wait, you made the claim that atheists don't understand what they're rejecting, and you haven't even defined the God that they supposedly don't understand what they're rejecting? This is what I said at the beginning. He's just going to define God as undefinable and therefore win.
Question for you. What do you think guides you in your determination of whether or not what you're saying to me is true?
Can we go back? Can we stay on what we were talking about?
We are.
Okay.
You're just uncomfortable with the question.
No, I feel like you're just kind of throwing different spaghetti at the wall.
That is 100% what Jordan Peterson is doing. He is this guy calling him out so directly. Be like, I feel like you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall, dude. You're losing the plot, my guy.
Okay.
I asked you a very specific question. What is it that you think guides you when you're talking to me to help you determine whether what you say is true?
Logic, memory, reasoning, sensory information.
Experience, that sensory information.
How do you distinguish that from being governed by something that's false?
An interesting question.
How do you know the difference when you speak between what's true and what's false? So you could imagine...
Right? I can infer.
From what principles?
So, and what are you getting at?
I'm getting at the fact that your conscience guides you. Is that reasonable?
No! None of those things were conscious. None of those things... I'm sorry, does my conscience choose for me what tea I'm having in the morning? What the fuck are you talking about? spaghetti. This guy was right. What the fuck does having a conscience guiding you have to do with what this guy was asking him about the definitions of words? This guy was talking about the polysemous nature of language because Jordan Peterson brought that up before, and now Jordan Peterson is trying to completely fucking derail the direction this guy was going because definitely not Jordan Peterson was uncomfortable with the question. It's really too bad that Jordan Peterson isn't an honest interlocutor, because it would have been very actually interesting to discuss how do you define whether or not what you're talking about and what you're saying is true and untrue, and what delineates the difference between those things. That's interesting. That's a conversation that you could have where you probably wouldn't necessarily come to any kind of universal unifying answer. Because, like, the way you define truth matters. The way you're defining whether or not something even counts as being true or untrue, like Barry was saying in the chat, some things are not a matter of true or untrue, they're a matter of useful or not useful, right? That some desires aren't a matter of true or untrue. Is my coffee in the morning gonna make me feel good or make me feel bad? That might be a true or untrue. That might not change my desire to have coffee in the morning. Right? This isn't a moral quandary. This isn't a quandary about truth. It's a matter of desire. Do I want to listen to this song or not? That's not a truth question. Right? You see what I'm saying? So if you want to, like, I'm guided by my conscience to listen to Taylor Swift, like, it's also completely not applicable to what this guy brought up. He was 100% right. Peterson's just throwing spaghetti at the wall to derail it because this guy, surprise, surprise, is not the one who's uncomfortable with answering the question.
Conscious is defined by my empathy and my reason, or my foundational.
Define it any way you want.
Okay, so that's how I'm defining my conscience.
Define it any way you. I want to demonstrate that you use your conscience. So define your conscience any way you want. All right, my conscience is unknowable. Do you believe in it? Jordan! What were we calling him? Jorts? Peter Jordanson? Alright, hold on. I gotta pee. I'll be back in a second. It's so funny. He's such a goof. Oh, I don't have any alcohol for this, but that's okay. It's sad that, like, this dude who likes to fucking speak so bigly is, like, gets defeated in 30 seconds or less. Alright, go on, Jordan.
Conscience is my conscience is my sense of,
Right
and wrong. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah,
Where does that come from?
I would say that comes from
What the fuck does that have to do with what this guy brought to the table, Jordan? It doesn't.
An evolved capacity to empathize and a recognition of the benefits of engaging with and nurturing that capacity. And then that empathy is constrained and guided by reason, right? Like, for example, I am driving down the highway, there's a kitten in the road. I'm going to empathetically feel, oh my God, I want to save the kitten, but then reasonably, like, I'm going to get hit by a car, right? So that's sort of the process through which I make ethical decisions.
Okay,
is
how do
empathy
you-
constrained by reason.
Do you think that people can differ in their response to something empathically?
Yeah.
Is there a mediating principle that can tell you one person who's empathic and another person who's empathic that disagree, who's correct?
Interesting.
Yeah. Discussion. You communicate and you talk about it and you see the results of whatever you project utilizing experience to decide and figure out which one logically or emotionally follows between one thing or another. You can't separate logic from human emotion. They're not individual things. They're wrapped up in a ball. Right? So, for example, if somebody was like, I would hit the kitten, and the other person would say, I try to swerve, and another person says, I just completely turn the wheel and spin out, who's ethically correct? You're not. You're asking now a matter of pragmatism versus a matter of moral integrity. There isn't a this isn't a moral issue at that case, right? There isn't a moral issue between deciding to try to swerve your car to not hit the kitten and attempt to not kill yourself or other people. The moral quandary would be, do you care if you hit the kitten at all? That's more of an ethical question. Yeah, the Jesus take the wheel situation. If you want to ask an ethical question or a moral question, you're asking about whether or not it's okay to harm people, you need a completely different analogy. Also, morals and ethics are incredibly complicated, so trying to distill it down to vibes, which is what Jordan Peterson is doing. He's distilling moral and ethical decisions, and in fact, all decisions or assumptions about truth all decisions you make are about fundamental beliefs of true or false, which isn't accurate, and then trying to distill it down further to say that those are also moral and ethical decisions that you're making based off of vibes. Hey, nice to catch you live. I'm unfortunately feeling so much secondhand embarrassment for Mr. Peterson's behavior and stubborn perspective. Yeah, no, I agree with you. This is very secondhand cringe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we'd have to, talk it out, right? We do that in real life all the time when we have, whether that's a discussion with a friend about the right thing to do in a situation, whether that's a policy discussion about law, right? That's where we can converse with each other, think about things, explain our perspectives, and then kind of reach a conclusion, right? That I think that we do that all the time.
So Elijah, the prophet Elijah, defined...
People have forethought, right, Jordan? You can think through the implications of what is going to happen if you take one action or another, and based on predictors, you can decide about whether or not one is going to have the result that you want over another one, and then which result you agree with and disagree with. And if you disagree, you can fundamentally work that backwards to find out where you disagree and whether or not those disagreements are even valid to be considered good or bad, or true or false. Things are not this black and white. You can have two people that have two completely different ethical frameworks and come to completely different decisions, and neither of them are wrong. You could also have two people having completely different ethical positions and frameworks and coming to the same conclusion for completely different reasons. Jordan Peterson is just trying to broad brush this idea of true and false and black and white and right and wrong, and that's just not accurate. That is just not how the way the fucking world works. Not anymore. Even if you want to believe, or you do believe, that God made the world to have good and bad, You also, if you're following Judeo-Christian stuff, believe that the world is fallen and has developed from that point. And that all sin is equal. So it means that whether you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing is completely irrelevant. Because you can only forethought so much. And you can only know so many variables. If you think it's a good idea to help an old lady across the street and you both get hit by a car, did you do the right thing? If you didn't help that old lady across the street, she would have been going slower, and therefore that car would have gone by and not hit her or you. Could you have possibly foreseen that? No, you didn't have that information. You can't possibly know that. There is no ethically good or bad fucking decision in that. That's not a moral test. Not in this sense of the word. You can't possibly know all of the variables. There are 8 billion people and thus 8 billion backgrounds with 8 billion different consciousness with 8 billion opinions. And all of the history up until that point. You can't possibly know. There must be a right and wrong? Why? Based on what? I've seen that episode of Sliders. Oh, I got called out. Somebody knew.
God in the Old Testament as the voice of conscience within.
Okay.
That's a definition.
So you're saying by that definition of God, I see this kind of goes back to where I'm saying initially.
I'm not defining it. Elijah defined it.
Okay, so as Elijah defines
It's
God.
defined that way.
Because Jordan Peterson can't hold a position to save his fucking life because he's a coward and he is intellectually lazy. He likes to feel like he's superior than everyone, and if he doesn't have a position, he doesn't have to do any work.
Jonah, too.
Okay, so as
Cardinal Newman also defined it that way.
As I'm sure you know many people who've defined it that way. And it's impressive. You're a very knowledgeable person.
I'm not trying to be impressive. I'm
Okay.
You shut up, Jordan. I don't know if I like how much this guy is willing to like grant and capitulate to Jordan. Like if he actually believes that Jordan Peterson is like a knowledgeable person. I mean, I guess by some definition, not the definition I would use, but hey, you know, words are polysemous and can mean different things. He seems to hold the position that he is right. Right about what? He just holds the position that he's right, but that's it. But then no defining about what he's right about or what any of those things are or what they mean. I define my position as right. He believes that. Oh, God.
Pointing out to you how God is defined in the Old Testament.
All right. So to respond to that, I do think there are lots of interesting ways to define God. And that goes back to my kind of opening
Then how do we
statement.
specify what we're arguing about?
We use context clues, or again, it goes back to my example of the Mona
I'm
Lisa.
defining God as conscience.
Okay. So that's interesting, but then you're...
So I'm defined as God as conscience? I thought you said Elijah was doing that and you weren't doing that. Jackson Williamson says, because if there was none, I'm assuming you mean right, or if there was no right or wrong, how would we structure anything unless you're saying we can create our own values, in which case I would like to know how we may go about that. All right, so first off, we have to, if we're going to have this discussion, which I think is a fine discussion to have, it's a discussion we have on a regular basis, isn't new, we'd have to define what is good and what is bad. Right? So if you're going to say, if we don't have good or bad, how would we structure anything? Why do we need good or bad to structure anything in the first place?
You're kind of expanding the meaning of God.
you're also like there's a conflation going on here as well. Not in chat with this video and sort of like in general with this discussion is that you start getting confused and conflating good and bad with like correct and incorrect, right? Because you can be correct and still be morally wrong, right? You see what I'm saying? So if you can be correct but morally wrong, you have to then make a decision. Do you do something incorrect to be morally right? Jackson, no, we're not moving on. Answer the question. You made the claim. If you don't have good and bad, how would we structure anything? What makes you think we need good and bad to structure anything in the first place? Incredulity isn't an argument. So elaborate, if you could.
I'm not. That's how it's defined in the Old Testament.
Okay,
in Elijah and in Jonah.
Sure. So whoever. So
it's not whoever.
Okay.
Elijah is one of the major.
Oh my God! Whoever. It doesn't matter.
Testament prophets. Right? He's equal in stature to Moses.
Okay.
So it's not
who fucking cares, Jordan? Stop trying to derail it on purpose because you don't like that this guy is fucking dog walking you.
arbitrary.
All right. So that is interesting, but it's not relevant to the context with which I am using the term God.
It's directly relevant. Atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. You accept conscience as a guide, and conscience is one of the defining characteristics of God.
Yeah, but he defined conscious, and then you told him to define it however he wanted, and then you superseded his definition to define conscience as God, so we're back to the same problem. Jordan Peterson is simply going to use a fallacious begging of the question to define God in multiple different ways, in ways that are self-contradictory, to define it so that what he's saying initially in begging the question is true, which is presupposition and circular and not, it doesn't matter at that point. Again, we're back to, I've defined that spaghetti is is an apple. If I call an apple spaghetti, does it fundamentally change what the apple is? And I say, hey, I'm really healthy and and I go around to other people and I say, hey, I eat spaghetti every day and I'm super healthy. And those people think I mean, what everybody means when they say fucking spaghetti. They think I'm eating, fucking out of a can Chef Boyardee, or they think I'm eating, ravioli sometimes, because different places have different terms for different things, especially in cooking. But I've been talking about a fucking apple the entire time, and so when somebody says to me, well, actually, spaghetti isn't that healthy for you if you're eating it all the time, and I say, what are you talking about? You're rejecting spaghetti without knowing what understanding what you're rejecting? And it turns out that I've just been talking about an apple the entire time. Because Jordan Peterson is just going to play this game where he's just dancing around different, and he's just going to use whatever definition suits him at the time to try to, pretend he's winning when he's just making a fucking fool out of himself if you know anything about what's going on. Alright, I'm being yelled at to check the Discord. I am checking Discord. Oh, yeah. Jordan Peterson's body language. Yeah, he's, leaned over the table. His, hand is, way across the middle line. He's trying to, be intimidating or whatever. Yeah, he's a dumbass. He's a dumbass. He's so predictable.
In the Old Testament.
I think you're being intellectually disingenuous.
In what way?
Yeah, no. I like that this guy is calling him out. Jordan Peterson tries to, dominate it by throwing, a bunch of shit and interrupting him. This guy just stops and waits for him to finish and then just fucking nails him. I think you're throwing spaghetti at the wall. I think you're being intellectually disingenuous.
Because, again,
I asked you if you believe that...
Bro, let him answer, Jordan, you dipshit.
You just asked me a question and then you stopped me from answering it. In this setting, you understand...
Which is intellectually disingenuous, by the way. So, actually, right here, this guy owns the fuck out of Jordan. Watch this.
And conscious is one of the defining characteristics of God in the Old Testament.
I think you're being intellectually disingenuous.
In what way?
Because, again...
I asked you if you believe that conscience guided you.
You just asked me a question and then you stopped me from answering it.
Asking a question and then stopping the person from answering it is an intellectually dishonest tactic. Jordan Peterson is too busy being offended.
In this setting, you understand the way I am using the term God and belief.
Not in the least. I don't understand how you're using it in the least. That's why...
Then how can you make the claim that atheists don't understand what they're rejecting if you don't understand in the least what an atheist is referring to when they're referring to God in this context that was, again, I will remind you, this was changed. The title of this video was One Christian versus 20 Atheists before they changed it to Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson led with talking about the Judeo-Christian God. And now he's redefining it to mean, then he defined it to be unknowable in the first place, therefore circular definitional bullshit, pseudo-intellectualism, and then turned it around to be like, well, actually, I'm talking about conscious. And you said you accept that this thing that he's defined as consciousness works, and then Jordan's just gonna call that God.
Trying to define it. My definition of God as conscience is a lot more precise and oriented than your definition of the God that you hypothetically disbelieve in.
It's irrelevant to the fault lines of this debate.
How is it irrelevant?
Because in common parlance, when we're talking about atheists, God, belief, not belief,
I don't care about common parlance. I'm trying to get to something fundamental.
I think your point is
What
irrelevant.
do you mean you don't care about common parlance? You just said that everybody, like, that the fact that God, you presupposed God exists because he has to, for people to be able to communicate, to understand what God means, there has to be a fundamental definition. You're refusing to provide a fundamental definition, and then when this guy is just like, well, in common parlance, that Jordan Peterson already argued is a reason and a definition for God, a defining factor that demonstrates a God, is common parlance. And now he's saying, I don't care about common parlance? Remember when I said that Jordan Peterson's definitions are self-contradictory? Could Jordan please let people answer and finish their sentences? No, he cannot. He's not able to do that.
Relevant to the way that people tend to use these words. Your point that there are these polysemous ideas of God.
I didn't make that point. You did.
I did. Well, I made it.
No, Jordan did. Jordan said that words have to have some universal unifying factor at the beginning.
Specific point that God was associated with conscience.
I just feel like you kind of retreat into this semantic fog.
I'm not retreating at all. I'm
He is 100%. I wouldn't call him retreating. I would say he's been there the whole time. He hasn't moved. He just lives in rhetorical. He lives in semantic fog and word salad. That is where Jordan Peterson lives. He is the swamp creature of word salad. You know, like the swamp thing is like made of mud and fucking seaweed. Jordan Peterson is made of salad dressing and a handful of different types of lettuce. Maybe some cabbage on the top. he just hides inside of this semantic fog so he can jump scare people like he's a fucking cryptid. He's a pseudo-intellectual cryptid. Guys, we need to paint this. We need to remind me about this so I can fucking actually like do the art for like Jordan Peterson, the intellectual cryptid. Oh my god. This is not a conversation. It's Peterson wanking himself off to this sound of intellectual, to sound intellectual and going round and round in circular thinking to keep going. Yeah, absolutely.
Advancing, sir, you are retreating.
All right. Well, it was very nice.
The other guy just fucking laughing at him, and this guy ran out of time. Let's see. Is this the next question? Yeah,
appreciate
okay,
the
got it.
Yeah, it's very brave of you to do this.
Thank you.
It's very brave of you to do this. Why? Because Jordan's so intimidating? Like, again, we're 3 for 3 and he's been dog walked so far.
My next claim is that morality and purpose cannot be found within science.
That's not what science does! I'm gonna stand up for a minute. I've been sitting down. I'm gonna stand up. I'm gonna stretch a little bit. I gotta. For my next trick, I will define something in a way that nobody defines it as, in a way that makes no sense. Jackson seems to have forgotten what's going on. Jackson, that you made a statement claiming that without good, like right or wrong or good or evil, we wouldn't be able to build a structure around anything. I'm asking, can you elaborate on why you need good and bad to have a structure for anything in the first place? Morality and purpose cannot be found within science. Wow, it's almost like that's not what science does. Can we just skip this one? We can skip this one, right? The answer is that that's not what science does. The end. Fucking, this is just Jordan hiding in like this, trying to attribute something definitionally to science that doesn't do those things. You're demanding that science do philosophy. And science admittedly does have philosophy baked into it. But we're talking about like the material sciences. If I figure out how to build an atomic bomb, that doesn't tell me whether or not I should use it. That's a different question. I think philosophy and science are in the same fundamentals, but they're in different, like, they cover different things in the same kind of way, because I think these arbitrary boxes are arbitrary that we use to make communication easier and to help us understand concepts better. Not that they're fundamentally different things, but the point of science and contextually the type of science he's talking about philosophy and trying to attribute it to science. Again, electricity, the invention, the science behind electricity doesn't have a moral factor. That's not what it's about. You can say that there are ethical conversations in science. Science has, like, for example, I don't know, psychology, and what the ethics are of being someone touting their degree in psychology, being horribly anti any advancements in that field, and treating patients wrong, like treating patients poorly because of your personal beliefs. That is an ethical quandary. Psychology is also a different kind of science than, for example, mathematics. If I say 2 + 2 = 4, am I morally, what's my moral question? What's the morality behind that? What purpose am I deriving from 2 + 2 = 4? Anybody? Is it none? Is there zero? Is it all zero moral quandaries? Go figure. You're standing, or are you triggered? No. I was just laughing at Jordan Peterson's stupid-ass questions. But I was standing because I was sitting for too long, and I'm like, I gotta get up. I gotta get up and move a little bit. Ugh. My next claim is that morality and purpose cannot be found within science. Because that's not what science does. Congratulations, Jordan. Good job. I'm not even engaging with that. That's so fucking stupid. Let's go to the next one. Oh, yeah, we get this lady. Let's go. What's the next one?
Hi.
Good work.
Thank you.
Hi there.
I'm Zena. So I want to start off with like defining terms.
Yep.
How do you define worship?
Prioritize.
Prioritize. So almost like having a preference over something rather than the
It's a
other.
hierarchy of preferences.
Yeah.
And you use it to direct your attention.
Right.
So-
Right.
What? Sorry, I gotta go back a little bit further to get his next claim. Here's the next claim.
My next claim is that everybody worships something, including atheists, even though they might not know it.
All right, so this is what's going to happen. He's going to do the same thing with this thing that he did with the first thing. It means that he's going to do that thing that guy just accused him of doing, that hiding inside of semantic fog, and he's just going to define worship however the fuck he wants it, as arbitrarily as he fucking wants it to be. Completely flying in the face of, again, I will point out, his first argument, which was that the fact that communication exists and we can have agreed upon terms means that, we only have that because God. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to communicate. So if you're able to just define things however the fuck you want, it doesn't fucking matter. So let's go.
Hi.
Good work.
Thank you.
Hi there.
I'm Zena. So I want to start off with like defining terms.
This lady's name is Zena. I didn't think I could like her more.
How do you define worship?
Prioritize.
Prioritize. So almost like having a preference over something rather than the
It's a
other.
hierarchy.
Who defines worship like that? if you say, hey, I worship at this church, do you actually prioritize the church? Do you, what the fuck? Who defines it like this? I feel like nobody defines it like this. That's such also a loose definition. If you were going to define it that way, why wouldn't you then just use the word prioritize? Right? So if you don't go to church and say, I'm going to church to prioritize God. No. You might say that you prioritize God as part of your overall belief system, but you're not like that. Nobody defines it like that. It's not nobody ever. Wonderful.
Preferences.
Yeah.
And you use it to direct your attention.
Right.
So whatever you're attending to, you're worshiping.
Right. So I've kind of become a little bit familiar with your idea of like this value.
Are we just gonna accept that, I guess? Alright, sure, fine.
Laden hierarchy,
Yeah.
right? And you kind of posit that at the bottom of this hierarchy, or you could call it top or bottom, I
Yeah,
suppose.
right.
At the bottom of this hierarchy, this foundational priority in your life is going to be considered God.
That's
is that
right.
correct?
Yes.
Right. I'm trying to imagine a situation.
I like that she is trying her best to nail him down on actually, committing to a definition.
In which could there be that someone has a priority at their foundation that is different from someone else's?
Oh, definitely.
Right. So we can have different conceptions of God.
That's why we fight.
Right. So
I don't know if anybody noticed this, but this woman just completely blew him out of the water, and pretty much everything he said up until this point, unless he said something fucking different in his science thing. She just completely blew him out of the water. Did you guys notice? She just got him to agree that different people have different definitions of God. That was something he was fighting with the first guy about. That guy was trying to be like, yeah, no, well, that's one interpretation. And Jordan Peterson's like, no. She's actually read his material. Yeah. She's fucking nailed him, man.
right. So we can have different conceptions of God.
That's why we fight.
Right. So essentially, there's not one God, but there are multiple gods, and these gods exist in some realm of truth. It's true that this person has one God and it exists.
Yeah, probably better to think about it as multiple values, but that there's a hierarchy of values with something at the bottom.
Right, but at the
Or
bottom is
top.
God, and there
That's
are
a definition, yeah.
yeah. So at the bottom is God,
Yeah.
and there can be multiple people with different conceptions of God, and they're each valid in being called God. So there are multiple gods that exist.
It depends on what you mean by valid. So far, so good, but it depends on what you mean by valid, because I would say that some foundational conceptions...
By Jordan's logic, if he were to actually earnestly follow it through, it would mean that all of them are valid or none of them are valid, because only pieces of every individual interpretation of God is actually true, but there is some fundamental piece of truth in everyone's hierarchical fundamental definition of God. But the fact that Jordan is now acknowledging that those can be different things and things that contradict each other completely flies in the face of everything he said up to this point.
Don't play out when they're implemented. So if you put the wrong thing at the foundation, you end up in hell, for example. That's what happens in totalitarian states.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying...
So they're not all equal. Like, all foundational principles are not equal.
She didn't say equal, she said valid. Those are different words. Jordan, come on, keep up. You demanded other people keep up. You can do it. Word salad man.
Even though they might be equally foundational. Right.
So what makes one kind of foundational...
Do you notice his tonality completely shift when he's sitting in front of a black woman? Every definition requires one additional definition. Jordan Peterson is unable to have any meaningful communication. Absolutely. No, you're 100% right. There is no then this might be fundamental to who Jordan Peterson is as a person, as opposed to like any fundamental truth. Jordan Peterson likes to hide inside of the semantic fog and is made of word salad, meaning that there is no value to any conversation with him according to him, because the definitions are arbitrary and will change from topic to topic, let alone context to context, and sometimes within the same context and the same conversations. And he just says words that mean fucking nothing in anything that he's talking about. Like, he just says shit. Fucking That's a thumbnail. You guys want me to turn the look at this? Here, you guys want to grab that one? Let me get out of your way. Here you go. I feel like that needs to be put in here. Fuck. What a goof.
Oh, they might be equally foundational, right?
So what makes one kind of foundational tenet like better than another one?
That's an excellent question. Iterability. Imagine that you play a game with someone and you're a kid.
His answer is iterability. Thank you, Jordan, for proving my point. I appreciate that.
And it's fun. Mm-hmm. So then you play again and again and again.
So repetition.
It's playability across multiple iterations. So then you have a friend, and a friend is better than having a game.
What?
Right? So that's one. Breadth of application is another. So if it's just for me now, it's not as good as something that would be benefit to both of us across time.
Right. So we're explaining like characteristics that can be applied to like these types of like foundational.
Oh my God, Nether. That's an excellent question. Let me dodge it. Oh no.
But why is it that this iterability makes it better, and what does better mean?
Well, one hallmark of better is likely to be selected voluntarily.
Right.
So it's invitational.
Another descriptive kind of.
What? One descriptor of something that is defined as better is desirability? So smoking? So if I choose to start smoking, or I am convinced, let's say, even beyond my desire, when I was young, to start smoking, my desirability is to smoke is a factor of something that is better? This is what I mean. You see how he didn't actually define better and didn't even try? He just gave an example of a trait that something better might have? Completely non-functional. There is no value in talking to Jordan Peterson because he cannot provide fucking anything of substance. It's all just fucking cheese. Actually, to be fair, cheese is good. I like cheese. Cheese is great. Jordan Peterson's fucking absolute trash. This is so useless. My or me, let me know how to pronounce your name, says, listen fully, he will define. Really? He hasn't defined God yet. You think he's gonna define what better is? Is that, you actually think that? What do I get? Alright, let's make a bet here. You think that Jordan Peterson is actually going to define what is better. So if you're right, or I'm right, what's the let's make a bet here. What do you want? He's dodging. He's 100% dodging. Is there no value or is there a lack of value in talking to Peterson? There's negative value. Let's make a bet. What do you want? He will define God and better. I watched the video. I don't believe you. Alright, he doesn't want to take the bet. Fine.
Quality. So we're talking about characteristics that in some type of system with a goal, an output being like, we could maybe say...
You notice how she said, so we are talking about characteristics, and he hasn't stopped her or disagreed with her because he didn't define better. He's describing characteristics of a hypothetical better. That's not a definition. That's dodging the question.
It's invitational.
Another descriptive kind of quality. So we're talking about characteristics that in some type of system with a goal, an output being like, we could maybe say happiness, right? Or some type of...
Harmony.
Harmony,
Yeah,
right?
that's better. Not happiness precisely, because it's too short term.
Exactly. So as someone who is...
What? Not happiness because it's too short term? Well, I mean, I guess if you define it that way, Jordan, but sure. Did I watch this first? No, I did not watch this first.
Yes, right.
Jordan Peterson is just fucking predictable.
Can explain that within a system, there are things that we can see as better or worse to meet this goal or meet this output. But what we're interested in, though, is what could make these things, regardless of any system, right?
Well, imagine that you set up a system and you implement it, and it produces the opposite results to which you intend. Oh yeah, that's not a good system.
Exactly.
Right, so the foundational principles are lacking because when you implement them, the game degenerates instead of moving towards the aim.
Right,
Okay,
so we're talking about
okay.
within a system. When we talk about something being moral, right?
And she's correcting him now. Notice how his body language has changed? His body language has changed because she's read his material and she's throwing his stuff at him, so he wants to seem less aggressive and more intellectual, so he's leaned back. He's disengaged in a way that is not necessarily totally disengaging from... He feels more comfortable because he feels like he's more... He already feels like he's up here. Which could be indicative of a lot of things that I won't hyperanalyze right now, maybe for another time. But you'll notice that major change in positioning for him. Also, you'll notice that she said that, be like, okay, so like in this system, we can agree on those things, but if you remove the system, how do you decide what is better and worse? And then all he did was agree with her about the system and mansplain it to her back. Like, that's not what she just said. And then doesn't answer the question. Because her question wasn't about the system. Her question was like, we can take this, but if we remove it, then what?
Absolutely moral. It means that without a system, right, this thing is simply moral with no reason. Like, stands independent, this thing is good. So I'm trying to figure out if such thing can exist. And if so, do you believe that these things are moral in of themselves, like self-evidently moral, or are they moral in accordance with the system?
I knew I was going to like her. You remember at the very beginning of this, and I was just like, her. I love her. I hope she gets a chance. Mwah! What a fantastic question. Wonderful.
I can't define them any more accurately than I already did, really.
Okay. In regards to morality, when we talk about the divine, when we talk about God and religion, these moral tenets and religion, right, and God exists as good because it is God, right? So it's self-evident, right? Without any kind of goal or output, this thing
That's presupposition.
is good. So I want to figure out how.
There's an element of that that's true. So, for example, in the story of Job...
Oh, is there? Oh, boy. Oh, boy. There's an element of that which is true. Okay, so then it's not a true statement? What does that mean, Jordan? Because he's not going to explain what that means. He's just going to state it because it's obvious. It's self-evident. Oh, boy.
Job. Job is unfairly tortured in consequence of a bet between God and Satan. So Job is emblematic of someone who's being hurt for no apparent reason.
Are we really just gonna skip over the God made a bet with Satan part? We're just gonna take out that, not address the gambling addiction that God seems to have.
Okay, so Job's response to that is that he refuses to lose faith in himself, and he refuses to lose faith in the ultimate goodness of being. Okay, and those are actions.
Oh no, Mai is really mad. I have not seen credit him a single time. Oh really? You came here expecting me to credit Jordan Peterson? What? Why? He's the equivalent of an intellectual Swamp Thing. Sorry that I'm not patting your favorite intellectual jerk-off buddy to make him feel better about himself.
Dramatic decisions. They're not exactly evidence-dependent because he is suffering. There's an arbitrariness in that that's reminiscent of what you claim.
So I'm essentially trying to figure out, do you believe that something can be good?
He didn't answer the question. He said, well, part of that is true. Let me talk about this Bible story and then not elaborate on the true part, on the false part, why or why not, or actually answer the question you asked. So we're back to, he hasn't defined God. He hasn't defined beneficial or like good, which is what Mai promised me that he was going to define better. He has not defined better yet. So we're still on another dodge.
Stance independently, something that can be good.
I don't know what you mean by stance independent.
Okay, so
you
I
mean
mean
independent of people?
Independent of people. We can use that, or more so.
She means independent of a structure, which is what she said initially.
Be more specific. Something that can be good, right, regardless of any end goal. It's just good.
No, I think good is tied up with goal.
Goal, okay. I completely agree. So, in a sense, this is why...
That's why the religious goal in Christianity is the establishment of the kingdom of heaven on earth. It's goal.
Oh my god, no it isn't. That isn't even the goal of Christianity, dude. The goal of Christianity is the fucking end times. The point in Christianity is that you can't have heaven on earth. You don't get that until God fucking blows the horns and everything fucking explodes, and then we get a new earth, or a new place that's not even defined as earth. So you cannot have the establishment of heaven on earth here and now. It's nihilistic. It's nihilistic as in it wants to see the end of the world. Good God, this man is insufferable. He can't even fucking get something fundamentally right without adding a bunch of horseshit to it.
Dependent.
Okay, right.
So it's in reference to a goal.
So,
or the goal would be the imitation of Christ.
Someone's goal, right?
So Jordan just said that there is no objective good or bad or objective morality.
Can be something that doesn't encompass being in congruence with God or being with God.
No, the thing that they want to be in congruence.
Oh, right, okay. It is God.
That's right.
Not they, Jordan.
That's right. That's good. That's great. The thing they want to be in congruence.
God, he's so condescending when he, like, his whole body language and attitude shift when he started talking to this woman makes me fucking sick. This misogynistic piece of shit. Unbelievable. Does he think that her makeup is trying to fucking imitate her fucking vulva too? Asshole.
With is fundamentally equivalent to their God.
So what makes someone a Christian?
Baba asks, is that general across all Christian denominations? So it depends on whether or not you include Catholicism inside as part of Christianity, right? So a lot of this has to do with like a lot of that rhetoric comes up more in like evangelical Christianity, but it doesn't actually, depending on which denomination you look at, will depend on how like aggressive they are about it. So they're not necessarily all equal across the board, but it is a definitive part of the doctrine. It's a major part of the Bible, specifically in the New Testament, as well as being, depending on how you feel about it, retrofitted into the Old Testament as well, depending on which books you're looking at. So like if you're looking at any like the prophetic texts, and then you're looking at, like, if you take a look at, like, Revelations and some of the Chronicles, that you can kind of hamstring your way into a couple of different interpretations, because it's almost like the Bible is intended to be interpreted differently depending on when and what you're looking for, right? So, for example, the rapture, right? So the rapture is a big fucking deal in Christianity. Catholicism will or will not make more of a bigger deal about it, but Catholicism does a lot with guilt and punishment during your life right now. And more Protestant things will be like, no, you get punished after. God deals with that after the fact, so you don't necessarily need to. They still lean on guilt, but it's more guilt now and punishment later, whereas Catholicism tends to lean towards guilt and punishment now, right? So if you're looking at, like, it's absurd of Peterson to just make this proclamation about Christianity with this really broad brush that that the goal is to have the kingdom of heaven on earth, when that's, if you read the Bible, not the intention at all. The rapture is about removing God's people from the earth while God judgment punishes everybody for a little while and picks a couple out and then destroys the earth and then makes a new place. And there's debate among scholars and among, just anybody that you ask about whether or not the Christians get to be raptured before this big judgment bullshit happens, or during, or after. So there's like a lot of things like that. Yeah, and Catholicism also has purgatory. So, absolutely. So it really just, for Jordan to say that is fundamentally silly, especially since if you keep in mind that Jordan claims that he's not a Christian. Jordan claims that he doesn't believe these things, and that these are things that just other people believe. So I'm going to poll in the chat. I'm going to make a poll real quick. And the poll is going to say, is Jordan Peterson a believer? Question mark. Do you think Jordan Peterson's a believer? Show that I'm wrong. Go ahead. Are you saying that the Revelations doesn't exist in the Bible and there's no reference to Revelations anywhere in the New or Old Testament outside of the book of Revelations? Are you saying that the book of Revelations doesn't say that the world will be destroyed? Is Jordan Peterson brain damaged? I think we all already kind of think that Jordan Peterson got brain damage while he was in Russia, getting fucking put into a medically induced coma for reasons. Let me just get rid of this. He's no skeptic, that's for sure. Yeah, fair.
And what makes someone not a Christian? What makes, like that's what I'm trying to figure out. Because
That's a good question.
yes.
Yeah, well, probably the deepest answer to that is willingness to shoulder your cross voluntarily and trudge uphill regardless of circumstances.
Okay, so someone can have a God, because in your definition, your first preference, that is God, right? So someone can believe in God, right, and not be a Christian, right?
Yeah, well, there's a statement that Christ makes in the Gospels. He says, not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven.
So not that they're even saying that they believe in God, but they just...
No, but that's why I'm saying this to you, is that Christ himself...
I know that's not what you meant to say at all, even though I just acted like I was saying something profound. No, the one you're looking for is, like, people cannot believe in God, that's not going to stop him from existing, and, like, even if people don't believe, they still believe. Like, Jordan, you're transparent as fuck. Unbelievable. He's such an asshole.
Points out that there's a difference between people who say they believe and people who act it out. And the fundamental issue is the action rather than the stated belief.
Which isn't what she is saying, Jordan. Fucking listen to what she's saying. You're just stating. Remember when I said he hides in word salad? Remember when I said he's a word salad monster? Yeah, he's not, nothing that he's saying right now is even remotely relevant to what she said. It's not applicable at all. Does he want to impress her? Yo, she is pretty cute, I'll give him that.
But he also says that, to be saved, right, you must believe God has died for your sins, or that God has resurrected in some way. So it's like, I don't necessarily...
That is the dogma of Christianity or Catholicism.
think that we can take from the Bible and say that, like, acting in accordance with God necessarily means, or acting in accordance with, the principles of God, like, for example, sacrifice, like you talk about, means that you are Christian. I don't see how you can get that from that interpretation and then, kind of justify it as the truth.
I don't think that the fact that you sacrifice is sufficient to make you Christian.
So can we repeat once again?
That's not what she said, Jordan. She said, as the example you gave. Not that it was complete, because it's almost like Jordan hasn't provided a complete definition for anything. He just picks certain things and says, well, this is an attribute of the thing that you asked me to define, because he won't define anything. Who do you think can give the best interpretation of the Bible? Because if Peterson is not it, then who? You're using Jordan Peterson as your fucking authority on the Bible? Why? And also, you're dodging my other question. You want to go ahead and actually answer the one that I said before, where you said, let me interpret the Bible incorrectly, then say everyone else is wrong, and you haven't shown how I'm wrong in what I described? I'm surprised he is even taken seriously. He's so intellectually dishonest and has an angry face while talking for some reason. Yeah, he's struggling to think. That's the him struggling to come up with more word salad. He's not actually thinking about what's being said. He's just running through the thesaurus that he's fucking shoved into the side of his head. The Pope? Yeah, the Pope's a good one. Why do you think Peterson is the be-all of interpretation? Exactly. Why? And here's the other thing. Why would you ever take only one person's interpretation of the Bible? Who do I think would be the best interpreter of the Bible? God. I think God would be the best interpreter of the Bible, quite frankly. And God has no, Pope Bob, and God has no inability to communicate that directly with anyone. God should and is, by definition, able to give any individual person or every individual person an exact interpretation of the Bible right now, or at any given point in time. The best person to interpret the Bible is God.
And what you believe makes someone Christian.
There's many things.
This dude, by the way, Jordan Peterson, is still LARPing like he's a psychologist and didn't have to flee the country because his license was being revoked.
things, but one of the most fundamental is that you believe that the cosmos itself is founded on the principle of voluntary self-sacrifice. Best founded. Let me offer you a contrary example.
So that's like every mother ever. Any person who has birthed a child has made a massive self-sacrifice. Period. Whether they wanted to or not.
So I could assume that power rules. And so that my assumption would be, if I can make you do it, I win. Right, and I can found it.
Just because you didn't like my answer, Mai, doesn't mean you get to arbitrarily change it. But I like that you're admitting that God isn't talking to people, and that's realistic. Which means he's not talking to Jordan Peterson either. On the side note, though, how about you answer one of my questions? And then maybe I'll consider acknowledging you.
The whole society on that, and that happens a lot, by the way. And that's also how societies tend to degenerate. And so that would be a society that was founded on the principle that you get to sacrifice and I don't have to. Right. Now, the contrary to that would be something like you give up voluntarily and with courage all the things you need to situate yourself properly in relationship to the future and other people. Right. So then there's a harmony. That's why I talked about harmony earlier.
So you navigate your life, right, in accordance kind of to this principle of self-sacrifice. Can I say it in that way?
Yes, you can definitely say it that way. That's exactly right. And navigate is the right term.
So someone does not have to have any awareness of Christ, of the story of Jesus, but let's say 60% of their actions, right, or more, whatever kind of metric you want to use, are in line with this self-sacrificial.
He's agreeing that the line of measurement is arbitrary, and he doesn't realize that he just agreed that the level of belief in God and action is fucking arbitrary. There is no measurement. It's arbitrary. This woman is dunking on him and he has no clue.
The Christian thinkers of the Middle Ages dealt exactly with that problem when they were talking about the pre-Christian philosophers, for example. And they noted the similarity, let's say, between pre-Christian Greek thought and later Christian thought, and presumed that there were moral actors outside the Christian domain.
Right.
So
is that person Christian, though? Is that person Christian?
Well, to some degree, again, that's a matter of definition, because they wouldn't be proclaiming Christian.
Exactly! A matter of definition. Jordan, your original argument was that there can't be multiple definitions of God. And the fact that we cannot have communication if there is. This woman is not only destroying him in real time, she's destroying what he said before by having him contradict himself. Because of course he's contradicting himself.
Propositions, but they're acting out the pattern. Right. So you imagine that full Christianity would involve a dozen things. And you can imagine someone who knows nothing of Christianity, say, acting out 8 of them.
Right.
So then they'd be 8/12 Christian or something like that.
Christian. Well, but to be like a full Christian, how can someone say I am?
This whole thing is just Jordan Peterson defining the fucking no true Scotsman fallacy into existence.
Christian, like I am Christian, not 8/12, but Christian.
Well, I hesitate to do that personally because I think it's the kind of goal that you be very careful about proclaiming the technical.
But belief is not necessarily, to be mostly Christian, belief is not necessary. 8/12s or, right?
Well, it depends on what you mean by belief. See, because I would say that acting out.
Oh, okay. He just agreed and then it's just like, oh, wait, hold on. This fucks me over, shit.
Pattern is the deepest form of belief. Now, you could add to that what you say. So, maybe in the optimal situation, how you act and what you imagine and what you say, they're the same, right? But you can imagine a hypocrite who says all sorts of wonderful things and does nothing.
I mean, Jordan is sitting right there. I don't think you have to imagine a hypocrite, but sure.
You could imagine another person who acts in a very positive manner, but proclaims nothing.
So
right?
what I'm kind of seeing is like a descriptive, a really comprehensive but descriptive analysis of human action, human thought, and by which we can characterize people and put people in boxes. But I don't see.
Why in boxes?
Like, when I say in boxes, I mean like I can categorize you based on your actions, not based on necessarily what you say, but based on your actions that you are more so or less so Christian, right? Things like that, right? So
Yeah, he literally just said that, so.
Categorize people as Christian.
Well, I would say more or less voluntarily self-sacrificing.
But that's also what we came to, though, is that someone can be like 60% or 70% Christian based on simply just acting in that way.
Yeah, Richard Dawkins is like that.
I watched that debate.
Let's pause there. We've been voted out by the majority.
Very good.
Oh my god, I wanted to hear her finish because she just fucking nailed him to a wall and was like just ready to fucking hit that fucking final blow. But alas.
Really, very thoughtful.
Hey, Dr. Peterson.
How you doing?
Danny, nice to meet you.
What's your name?
Danny.
Danny.
You're saying atheists worship things or people or places, whatever. Can you be very clear about your definition of worship again?
Attend to, prioritize, and sacrifice for.
Okay, that's it. That's your understanding of worship.
Well, I could flesh it out, but that'll do for the time we have.
Okay, do
He's so condescending.
Catholics attend to Mary?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so do they fit that description of worship?
Yes.
So you would say Catholics and other people that revere Mary, like the Eastern Orthodox tradition, worship Mary.
Well, they might not put her in the highest
But
place.
you would put it that way.
No.
You just said it. Now you're taking it back
There's
now?
still a hierarchy.
Okay, there's a hierarchy, but within the
There's something at the top.
All right, you can worship things
Mary
below.
is quite a ways up the hierarchy, but not at the top.
Let's go over your definition of
Wait, I thought the top was the bottom. I thought the bottom, the fundamental, was God. So Mary wouldn't be at the top. Mary would be close to the bottom of the pyramid hierarchy. He gets his own fucking analogy confused.
worship again. What's your definition of worship?
Attend to,
Attend to.
prioritize,
Do
and
Catholics
sacrifice for.
what do Catholics attend to? Do they prioritize Mary over all other human beings?
No, I didn't say overall, did I? I didn't add that to my definition.
You understand?
I said there was a hierarchy.
You said there's a hierarchy. That means you have to have more than not more. Oh no. Oh, he's cooked. Guys, put a fork in him. He's fucking done.
Well,
you attend to
so you can attend to something trivially, or you can attend to it deeply.
And now
there's
you're
a-
adding stuff to the definition. But your original definition.
Didn't he say initially that he could flesh it out more, but he didn't need to for this discussion? And now as soon as somebody asks him a very blatant, straightforward question, he has to suddenly start fleshing out that definition? Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. Oh, brother. Oh, no.
I did the hierarchy part at the beginning.
Are you
just
familiar?
didn't understand it.
Are you familiar with the Immaculate Conception?
Why is that relevant?
Because you go to a Catholic church, don't you? Or you've attended recently. You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure,
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
somewhat.
Okay, you're
Their
familiar.
doctrines are very
how do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
you say
He won't fucking answer. Oh, no, that's what, 4 times? Hold on, put it back. How many times does he dodge this? 2 here.
Let's go over your definition of worship again. What's your definition of worship?
attend to,
Attend to. Do
prioritize, and
Catholics
sacrifice for.
what do Catholics attend to? Do they prioritize Mary over all other human beings?
No, I didn't say overall, did I? I didn't add that to
He's
my
not answering. He's just adding other things.
You understand?
I said there was a hierarchy as well.
You attend a
So you can
Catholic.
attend to something trivially, or you can attend to it deeply.
And now
there's
you're
a-
adding
Which is turning it into a hierarchy, yes.
the definition. But your original
I
definition.
added the hierarchy part at the beginning.
Are you
just
familiar?
didn't understand it.
Are you familiar with the Immaculate Conception?
Why is that relevant?
Because you go to a Catholic church, don't you? Or you've attended recently. You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure,
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
somewhat.
Okay, you're
Their
familiar.
doctrines are very
how do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a...
I would like to remind everybody that this video was originally titled 1 Christian versus 20 Atheists. Oh my god.
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either you're a
'cause I
Christian
won't
or you're
talk
not.
to you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell you.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression
private.
I was invited to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video.
You're really quite something, you are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing. Right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
Oh my... He said it was Christians versus atheists in the opening. He did. Holy shit. If there has ever been... Remember when I said Jordan Peterson is intellectually lazy and will not hold a position? Holy shit. Oh my, you're really something, aren't you? Aren't I? Oh my god, this man was ready. This man knew exactly what he was doing. Holy shit. He got under his skin very fast. Yeah, because he fucking pegged Jordan Peterson. Everybody else has been playing Peterson's game. This guy came in and fucking flipped the table and was like, no. We're playing this. You don't know where you are right now? I was told that this was supposed... Oh my god, that was... Mwah! 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 Hey, where's that guy or gal who was in here saying that Jordan was going to define better and that Jordan was going to define God? He hasn't done that yet. Wow. Hey, Mai, did you just miss this whole bit? Are you going to address any of the fucking questions that you were asked initially? Because you still haven't. He was not being a smartass. He was asking valid questions. Correct. Correct. Jordan Peterson just got mad. After Jordan Peterson being a condescending, intellectually dishonest prick this entire time, one guy comes in, asks him completely direct fucking questions. Jordan Peterson has a hissy fit about it. Ugh. He can also be a smartass. There's nothing wrong with that in a debate. This is not a personal fight. Yo, Saint, Saint, you're actually correct. Even if he was being a smartass, which I think he was being a bit of a smartass, he's allowed to have an attitude. There's not, like, Jordan Peterson isn't better than anybody else. And Jordan Peterson wants people to be fucking below him in these conversations. That's why he's behaving the way he is with everybody else. Like I said, Jordan Peterson's out here playing poker, and this guy came over, grabbed the deck, and went, we're playing 52 poker, motherfucker. That was incredibly well done. I applaud... Who is that? Danny? Danny! You've earned a fan. That was incredibly well done. Incredible. Okay, so what would have been really funny is if nobody else went up. If nobody else got up from their chair to go talk to him, that would have been... Notice how there's only one person that actually got up and ran, and everybody else just is kind of slowly. You have any idea how brilliant it would have been if nobody else had gone up? So good. All right, I'm going to skip ahead here, and I want to see what the last question is.
Job is a good man who has everything taken away from him in the most painful possible way.
To settle a bet, right?
With Satan, yes. And so he...
To settle a bet with Satan? Jordan still hasn't dealt with at all that and demonstrated that fucking everybody worships something. Can't fucking contend with that shit.
My final claim is that atheists accept Christian morality. but deny the religion's foundational stories?
I mean, that's really fucking stupid. Atheists accept Christian morality, but deny the religion's foundational stories. Okay, well, first off, so what do they do? And second off, I'm gonna end the poll. This is just defining morality into existence. It's presupposition. I don't know if you guys have noticed, because let's talk about this a little bit. Everything that Jordan Peterson has done so far is he's just doing presupposition. That's all this is. He's just presupposing, right? He's presupposing God. He's presupposing Christianity. And it's interesting that Jordan is totally fine with presupposing the Christian God and presupposing the Christian stories and presupposing Christian morality, but refuses to say and claim he is in fact a Christian. That should be telling to some people. That should tell you something about Jordan Peterson. On top of that, I'm going to throw out here, he's presupposing Christian morality as being true, accurate, or real. So he's just going to do the thing he did already again for the third time, because I didn't even bother with the science one because that was just absurd. That he's just going to define it into existence. So if he defines the words because they're so malleable to him, even though they're not, his initial claim was that words aren't malleable at all, that therefore his claim is correct because he's presupposing it. That's about it. That's all this is. This is all just bare bones, base level, low tier, shallow as fuck presuppositionalism and apologetics that's just been like spruced up, quote unquote, with word salad. That's all it is. Jordan Peterson's just a pseudo-intellectual running a script, and it's not even a new script. It's not even a fancy script. It's an old script where he's just throwing fancy words inside it to sound like he's fucking smart. That's all it is. I will notice and I will point out, again, despite the claims of somebody who says they watched the video, that Jordan was going to define better and was going to define God, looks like you lose that bet. Well, I'm going to call it there. Thanks so much for joining me. That's absurd. Is there any other one at the end here? Oh, they come back. Oh, no, the girl came back. Oh, and then okay, maybe I'll talk about this later. I'm going to watch that on my own, actually. Next time, we are going to be talking about Charlie Kirk. And I'm going to be doing a bit of a deep dive. So it's going to take us a few episodes. We're going to be at it for a little while. Charlie Kirk went to Cambridge University and tried to do kind of the same thing that Jordan Peterson is doing, but in Cambridge. And he got absolutely rolled. Absolutely fucking rolled. But he got rolled. But I want to not just talk about how he got rolled like we just did with Jordan Peterson. I want to talk about how he got rolled, but then I want to show you the clips that he took out and presented on his YouTube channel as like just the fucking cope. The absolute copium that Charlie Kirk is fucking huffing. I want to show you how then Dave Rubin had to like show up to try to bolster what Charlie Kirk was trying to pretend. I think our conclusion is that Jordan Peterson claims that he doesn't believe anything, because if he claimed that he believed anything, he would have to defend it, and he can't. He doesn't believe that he is capable of defending the Christian position personally. Therefore, he refuses to identify as a Christian but still tries to defend the position, and he does so poorly. I think it would be a mistake for Christians to look at, or Catholics especially, to look at Jordan Peterson as any kind of leader of thought in your theology or leader of thought in your philosophy, and I would recommend find somebody who actually has studied theology. They might be a little bit of a better source. They might be a little bit more intellectually honest and communicative, and they might be less of a piece of shit. The misogyny in this video was wholly on display, and oh boy, but the fact that I could roll Jordan Peterson in 30 seconds or less was peak. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm gonna take off. Have a good day, everybody, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Fuck that guy and his fucking YouTube videos. Stop listening to a man who doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, you idiots!